Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about how much does it actually cost to stay 1 month in Thailand. The main purpose of this series is to show you all what you can expect while you're abroad in these specific areas, and for the types of activities, food, whatever it may be, what you can get for that amount of money. And I've gone through and painstakingly noted everything that I purchased for my entire 29 days in Thailand. And so I really want it to be a very clear picture of what you can get there for that amount of time and that amount of money. Just a little disclaimer on this. I went in 2017. The currency conversion rate was 33 baht to 1 US dollar. In 2021, it's about 30 baht to the US dollar. So it could be a little off of what I'm saying now, but things from what I've been looking at are still pretty similar. I always want to make everything very clear and available and as helpful as possible. So I've crafted everything into a nice spreadsheet that gives you the averages, the totals, anything like that. So just go ahead and click in the link below if you'd like to download that Excel sheet and really just dive a little bit deeper on that if you don't want to hear me talk about it. But I'd love for you to stay. So transportation is the first thing we need to talk about. Everybody needs a flight to get there unless you live there. And with the flights, an international flight for me from the LA region cost me about $550. And then included with that, I did 3 kind of domestic flights within Thailand, and those were between an hour to an hour and a half, and they ranged between $35 and $45, but really easy. Their domestic flights and their terminals, quite nice. And so that's just with the flights alone. Another way to get around while you're actually in the cities are tuk-tuks or taxis. Tuk-tuks themselves, they range about $1 a time you take them, but the more people you have, the less it's going to cost. Same thing with taxis. And so they can go down, with the taxis being a little more expensive for the distance you actually get to go. One thing I can say though is that tuk-tuks are very nice in the fact that you might be able to persuade them to reduce their costs a little bit, or in that case, you can pay them a direct just amount. So if I want to give them 20 baht to go a certain distance, they might do that. They're a little more open to negotiation. Another way that I've taken, and this is hit or miss for some people, is you can go with a direct van or an indirect van to certain areas. I did both, and the direct vans are a little bit cheaper and also faster. With indirect vans, in my case, I went to Khao Sok with it. It cost me about $15 for a 4.5-hour drive, or it should have been. In my case, we went around, it took about 9 hours. We had many stops where we picked up random people along the way that were part of these villages that we went through. We dropped off chickens at one point. We dropped off mechanical parts for cars, and again, more people. So I felt like we were a bus system as well as transportation system for tourists, and they dropped me off at this random place, left me there for an hour and a half. So it's hit or miss. It's hit or miss, but it got me there. They're pretty cheap. And then another thing that you can do, and this is what I recommend to anybody who goes out that feels comfortable with it, go rent a motorcycle. Motorcycles there cost you about $5 a day, with again paying for your own gas, but gas to go about an hour and a half cost me a little over $1. Very easy. And so go rent a motorcycle, get out there, you can go wherever you want. I got to go to the Sticky Waterfalls about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where I was at in Chiang Mai. It was phenomenal. It opened up so many things and was the way cheaper option. Again, if you feel comfortable. Last thing I'll say with that is I recommend definitely having your international driver's license. They do check over there. And at one point I was driving maybe a minute or so, and I got stopped by a huge blockade by the police that diverted all of the traffic with motorcycles. Whether you were international, domestic, didn't matter. You had to be brought over. They checked your license, which I didn't have, and we were fined for it. So in my case, I only spent $6. I did actually have to talk it down a little, so they're very nice, very understanding. So see what you can do, and again, be nice to them at any point. Actually, I recommend keep those helmets on. That's where the big fines are at. I had mine on, so I was good there. At the end of every section, I want to go through the averages of the amount over 29 days, as well as the total. So in this case, without the airlines, it was like $3.50 a day for transportation. Granted, I did walk a lot, but with the transportation I did do that you can see in the spreadsheet down below, it wasn't that bad. Not bad at all. And even with if you include the airlines themselves, that was $26 a day. So very, very reasonable for what you could expect to do in a day. And I did a lot of stuff. The grand total for transportation was just over $760, which was a good chunk of my total budget, but still not too bad. So I wanted to show that these are kind of the costs you can associate with transportation. So now let's talk about accommodation here, because you gotta stay somewhere. I mean, you could sleep at the airport, you could sleep on the street. I don't recommend to really just save your money and pay zero, but this is what I did. I got to see the whole spectrum from hostel to very high-end Airbnb. And so let's kind of break it down from there, is that hostel to Airbnb as far as the cost goes. So hostels there are actually pretty nice with a couple exceptions. And the cheapest hostel I got to do, which was actually my favorite one in Chiang Mai, that one cost me $3 a night. Yes, that one cost me $3 a night. Phenomenal. And at one point I even had the full bunk area to myself. So it's like I had my own private room. So about $3, but really the average cost per night at a hostel, if you shared a dorm with people, was about $5, $5 to $6 a night. Granted, we can go up a little bit to about $9 to $10 if you wanted your own private room at one of these hostels. It just depends on how comfortable you are with other people. I love hostels for the fact that you can just get out there, you meet a bunch of people, and met them actually in other cities as time went on. Very great for that. If you want to step it up a little bit from that hostel life, I did go and try a nice hotel, and over there you can get quite nice hotels for about $40 a night, and even less than that. I could have gone down and gotten them in the $20 to $30 range too for a private room, and that's something in the US would probably cost you about $100 to $150. So the big difference. And again, you can go and get like the Ritz-Carlton over there for, it was a couple hundred, or $150 to $200, I believe at the time, instead of paying $300 to $500 here. Big difference. And then the last thing you can do if you have a bunch of people, this is the route I would go. Go over to an Airbnb. I met friends there who rented it out and they just let me stay there instead of staying at a hostel. And at this point, it was phenomenal. The place was huge. It was like a big penthouse area it was in one of the high rises, very nice region, the newer developed areas. And in this case, they had 5 bedrooms, a bunch of bathrooms, huge area for a common space. They had their own kitchen. They had their own just, in-suite bathroom for this master bedroom. It was phenomenal. The area was great. It was very close to Lumpini Park, where you can see all of the Asian water monitors over there. But there's kind of a spectrum that you can kind of go with. And that Airbnb, I believe they were saying was about $200 a night for between 4 people. It was $50 a night for them for a very, very high-end place. They had your own security and all of that. You had to be checked in. It was fantastic. But again, if you have the budget for it, great. If you have the people, awesome. In my case, I wouldn't have spent that much, but it was great. I did the hostel life, and I would totally recommend if you're comfortable with that. Over the 29 days I had in Thailand, I spent $6 on average for my accommodation, which is, again, about the average cost I had for a hostel. So with a couple exceptions, with going a little bit nicer with that hotel at the very end, as well as doing some private rooms every once in a while. But for the most part, it was about $6 a day. The total cost for my accommodation was $176, which is not bad at all. Totally worth it though, and again, you can go up a little higher. They would have gone a little bit lower if I just did hostels all day, every day, but I chose to see some different stuff. All up to you guys. And that's what this whole thing is about, is I'm just giving you information. You do what you feel most comfortable with. Oh my goodness. It's bringing me back now just thinking about it, but the food is so good in Thailand. You guys have to get over and check it out. And it's really, really affordable, especially if you guys go to the kind of the night markets that are everywhere in the big cities. In Bangkok, I went to quite a few of them. Chiang Mai, so many there. I went one every night. They have some that are specifically for certain days of the week. You have to go out there and get them, because you can get a meal between $1 and $2 at these kind of more local street foodie places. And that's generally what I saw when I was about, if you want just a pad thai, simple pad thai, you could get that on a street side for $1.50, roughly. $1.50 to $2, depending on where you're at. And oh my goodness, so good. You can get out there, check it out. I got some ribs for very cheap over in these night markets. And even some of the other restaurants, you can go just sit down at the samurai restaurant that I went to like 3 times when I was in Chiang Mai. That restaurant was 59 baht, or just under $2 an entree. And those entrees can range from a full big thing of ramen, gyoza, all the good stuff. It's not very expensive. A little more than just street food, but progressing. It's still cheaper than what you get back in the US. And then we can kind of keep going up. When you get to the nicer restaurants, let's say, I went to a nice Indian place over in Krabi. I believe it was Krabi. But either way, that was about $12, and that was the most expensive meal I had there. But it was probably my favorite. You do get what you pay for. I did cheap out on quite a bit of it, and it was good food. It was really good food. But I just imagined what it would be if I went and spent $10 at an actual, maybe sit-down Thai restaurant. I didn't get to experience that, and I do want to experience that the next time I go there. You can still get McDonald's, there's Burger King, and some other Western-style foods. They are a bit more expensive. On average, you're spending $1 or $2 for a local dish, if you're getting the street food, of course. If you're going there, expect to spend $4 to $5 minimum, and it goes up from there. I got a pizza at Pizza Hut for $10. Very, very comparable to local prices at home. The only thing that you might not have that for is like KFC. If you get the more kind of Thai dish that they have available for the region, it was actually pretty affordable. That only cost me a little over $2 for the meal, and it was pretty filling, came with a drink. So fantastic stuff. Just keep that in mind. You can eat fast food like McDonald's, Western style foods, but really good out there. Go eat the street foods. I didn't get sick at all for any of it. I did have a couple friends that I met there that were sick and at home or at the hostels for a couple days. It does happen. Make sure to bring your medicine. It does help. So food and drink overall cost me about $7 a day for the average throughout my entire trip. And that does include all of the food I ate, all of the snacks, which I munched a lot, and all of the water that you are going to have to drink. And just with something with that too, is that you should really be drinking water that's not in a can or anything like that. Drink water that is bottled up on the top, sealed. So then any bacteria or parasites, they're not going to be in there when you're drinking it. It's a bit safer than just drinking either from ice or tap water that they have, or some of these canned drinks. You won't always get sick, but it's just a good precaution when you're traveling to some areas that have parasites, bacteria, viruses that can be seen. But you do what you want to do. And the total for the whole time I was there, food and drink, was about $215. I got to eat whatever I wanted, ate snacks whenever I wanted. So about 215 bucks for the entirety of my stay. So now we get to why you're actually in Thailand. I mean, the food, yeah, you go there for the food too. But the activities, what are you actually doing there? There's so much free stuff to do that you can just walk around and check out, or very minimal costs for them. So some of the things like I did that were free, you can go walk around. There's quite a few temples. Like Ayutthaya, that trip, that little day trip from Bangkok, you can just walk around totally free. The only thing that you could do is you could rent a bike there, and that cost me $1.50. So got me around, totally recommend. Other things, I love wildlife, and so you can actually see the second largest species of lizard in the world, just behind the Komodo dragon, over in Lumpini Park in Bangkok. They're just there, they get almost 10 feet, and they are awesome. They're swimming around, don't do anything to people, and they're really close to where I stayed at in that nice Airbnb with my friends. Or you can go check out some of these different temples. They range from fees of $1 to, well, some of them are actually less than $1. to a couple dollars just to get to a viewpoint or something like that. And a lot of the time they'll ask for donations, which if you're going and checking them out, I do recommend that you give the donations to the correct places. Others will require you to kind of pay your fee to get in. So, temples are everywhere, but there are some that are just nicer than others. So now let's get a little more expensive. I really budget my costs for activities. That's where I'm gonna go cheap out a bit on the accommodation. I'll cheap out on my planes, but I do not cheap out on my activities. And so from there, I went and did a couple things with elephants. Please go to an elephant sanctuary or something along those nature where they are ethical to the animals. You really have to do your research. And I found one over in Chiang Mai with the Dumbo Sanctuary or something like that. They're pretty much free roaming. You got to go out and you got to go in and bathe with them, touch them. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. And that cost me just under $50 for a half-day tour where they picked you up from your hostel, brought you up into the middle of literally nowhere on the top of a mountain that was about 3 hours away. They gave you the food with them to feed these elephants. You did a mud bath kind of with them. And then they also fed you lunch. I think I couldn't have asked for a better time, and I do recommend it. I spend a lot on scuba. Scuba diving is one of my favorite things to do, and it's not for everybody, but that is a significant cost of my activities for my trip. Scuba anywhere in the world, from what I've seen so far, is very comparable. It's about $125, $150 for a 2-dive trip. Just to kind of put that in perspective, my scuba was about half of my cost, my total cost for activities. So if you don't do scuba diving, great, you can spend that elsewhere. Without scuba diving, if you took that out, my average is about $10 a day for doing cool stuff every single day. It's awesome. If you add in the scuba diving, we're looking at about $17 a day. Total cost for every activity that I did, including scuba diving, was just over $500. If you cut out the $212 that I did with scuba diving, it cuts it almost in half. And that is a considerable amount. So really, we're just looking at $288 of activity costs. I will do that any day of the week for doing all the stuff I did. I got to do scuba diving. I got to do bamboo rafting. I got to stay on a bungalow with a bunch of monkeys and stuff like that. So and many, many more things. I'll do a whole nother video on the activities and what you can kind of do there. What my top things to do in Thailand were. Because there were a lot. That video is going to be hard. All right, so now we're on to our last category, and this may not apply to everybody. And that's why I just want to call it the other category. This is where I spent time on and money on things like souvenirs. They cost me just over $50. And again, that can range wildly. But I just want to say that that's in there, and that is a cost that I put into my spreadsheet that may not apply to everybody. The big thing that may apply, though, is that laundry is something I never thought about when I left to go there. But it is a cost you do have to kind of think about. What I roughly spent was about $2 to $3 a week on laundry. Total, I only spent like $8 on laundry. And honestly speaking, I probably should have done one more load. I cheaped out a little bit and probably smelled because of it. If you do any type of mud trekking, I recommend some that have like these mud trekking shoes that have little cleats in them. And those only cost me $2, but they saved me a full world of hurt because so many people fell in mud. It was pretty funny, but I just stayed on top of it. I stayed nice and firm, and you can get them dirty and then toss them when you're done. Or in my case, I handed them off to somebody else who was doing a similar tour. So that's something I definitely recommend. In total, this category is pretty easy. It's about $100 total. And then that led me to about $3 a day on the average. Well, not too bad, but it is a cost that I do have to associate with my trip. And again, get your laundry done. Don't smell like me. Here we come to the end, and I just want to go through my grand total. So drum roll, please. In 29 days in Thailand, I spent $1,760. And that is nothing for everything that I got to do. And again, I'm going to go through a video detailing all of the cool stuff you can do there. It's phenomenal. Go again, check my spreadsheet down below with all the activities I did throughout the month. and the specific costs associated to them. Really, we're looking at about $60 a day. And it could have been optimized. I could have gone lower if I wanted to go and do cheaper activities, but I did spend quite a bit of money on those because that's what you're there for. For me, my budget travel is going and seeing all of these cool things, and I will 100% spend that $60 a day. Thank you all for watching this video, and I hope it was informative and you take some of these numbers to heart and really kind of craft your own trip. And go see Thailand when this whole stupid pandemic is done. But when it is, get out there and see it. It is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And go scuba diving while you're there. It's really cool. Like, the water was fantastic. So, I'll see you guys on the next video. You guys are awesome.